Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. My name is Aliyah Rumini Larasati. With my ID number is 4192111004. I'm a student from Mathematics Education Study Program 2019, Universitas Negeri Medan. This video aims to fulfill one of the achievements in History of Mathematics course, who taught by M.Pd, Andriani, S.Pd, M.Pd. In this video, I will continue discussion from the previous video. Today, I will explain what I know about chapter 2, namely about the philosophy of mathematics education. In this video, we will discuss 6 sub-chapters. The first one is philosophy of education, philosophy of mathematics education, constructivism philosophy, implication of constructivism in the learning process, student role, meaning of teaching, function and role of the teacher. The first one, I will discuss about philosophy of education. In a broad sense, it can be said that the philosophy of education is a philosophical talk about education. There are those who argue that the philosophy of education is a philosophy of the educational process. And on the other hand, there are those who argue that the philosophy of education is a philosophy of educational discipline. Philosophy of the educational process is concerned with the ideals, forms, method, and the outcomes of the educational process, while the philosophy of educational discipline is metadisciplinar in the sense that it is concerned with the concept, idea, and methods of educational science. Historical, the philosophy of education developed by philosophers such as Aristotle, Augustine, and Locke is a philosophy of the educational process as a part of the philosophical system. As for the philosophy of education that has been developed recently under the influence of the analytic philosophy, it is a philosophy educational science, namely the history of education, the sociology of education, and educational philosophy. There are several flaws of philosophy that so influence the philosophy of education. Some of them are described below. The first one, analytical philosophy. Analytical educational philosophy doesn't address and doesn't discuss substantive proposition or factual and normative issue about education. This philosophy analyzes and describes educational terms and concepts such as teaching, ability, education, and so on. This philosophy critiques and at the same time clarifies various educational slogans such as teach children, not listen. The second, progressivism. This philosophy argues that education is not just transferring knowledge to children, but also training thinking abilities and skill by providing the right stimuli. John Dewey belongs to the group of progressivism. He said the school is a social institution. Furthermore, education is a life process, not preparing children for the future. Education is a process of life itself, so the individual needs of children must be prioritized, not subject matter oriented. The third one, existentialism. This philosophy states that the main goal of education is not so that students are helped how to overcome their existential problems, but so that they can fully experience their existence. The fourth one, reconciliation. This philosophy argues that education is a social reform that requires a modern civilization renaissance. Reconstruction educators see that education and social reform are actually the same thing. They view the curriculum as problem-centered. The next one is philosophy of mathematics education. The philosophy of mathematics education focuses more on the educational process in the field of mathematics. But what is mathematics education? According to Wayne, 1973, mathematics education is a study of those aspects of the basic nature and the history of mathematics and the physiology of learning and teaching that will contribute to the understanding of teachers in their work with students, together with the study and analysis of school curricula, principles of teaching and learning, principles that underline the development and practice of their use in the classroom. Thus, the philosophy of mathematics education addressed the following issues. The first one, the nature of mathematics. The second one, math history. The third one, physiology of learning mathematics. Math teaching theory, child physiology in relationship to learning mathematics, school mathematics curriculum development, and the last one, implementation of the mathematics curriculum in the classroom. In this philosophy of mathematics education, in particular the constructivism philosophy will be present, which has been widely followed since the 90s. In 1983, Resnick published a note on the new notion of learning mathematics. He explained that a person who learns from understanding. Bettencourt in 1989 writes that people who learn do not only imitate and or repeat what they are taught or read, but creating understanding. Knowledge or understanding is a form by active student, not only passively received from the teacher. The next one is constructivism philosophy. In summary, constructivism notion of knowledge is as follows by von Glaserford and Kiesenaert in 1987. The first one, knowledge is not a mere representation of reality, but is always a construction of reality through the activity and the subject. The second one, subject from the cognitive category, concept, and structure necessary for knowledge. Third, knowledge is formed in the structure of one conception. The structure of the conception from knowledge if the conception applies in dealing with one's experience and it's called the concept of the way. In construction process, according to Glassford, previous ability are required by the ability to remember and recall experience, the ability to compare, make dedication about similarity and difference, and the ability to prefer one experience over another. The next one is implication of constructivism in the learning process. Learning is an active process of student constructing meaning or good meaning from text, dialogue, physical experience, or others. Learning also states the process of assimilating and connecting experience or materials that have been studied with the understanding that students already have so that their understanding develops. In characteristics are as follows. The first one, learning means forming meaning. Meaning is created by students from what they see, feel, and experience. The construction of meaning is influenced by the understanding it already has. The second one, the construction of meaning is a continuous process. Every time we are faced with a new phenomenon, construction is carried out. The third one, learning is not the result of development but development itself. Development means discovery and refinement of student minds. The fourth one, the real learning process occurs when one's games are indulged which stimulate the mind further. The fifth one, learning outcomes are influenced by students' experience with the physical world and the natural surrounding. The sixth one, student learning outcomes are influenced by what students already know, concept, goals, and motivation that affect interaction with the material being studied. The next one is student role. According to constructivism, learning activity are active activities. Students build their own knowledge. Students look for their own meaning from what they learn. This search process is the process of adapting new concepts and ideas to the framework of thinking that already exists in student minds. Students themselves who are responsible for their learning outcomes. The next one is meaning of teaching. According to constructivism, teaching is not transferring knowledge from teacher to student, but rather an activity that allows students to build their own knowledge. Teaching means participating with students in forming knowledge, making meaning, seeking clarity, being critical, and justifying. Thus, teaching is a form of self-study. Thinking well is more important than having a good answer to a problem being studied. Students who have a good way of thinking in the same sense that their way of thinking can be used to deal with new phenomena. If this way of thinking is based on assumptions that are wrong or uncomfortable at the time, students can still develop their mind. Teaching in this context is helping students thinking properly by allowing them to think from themselves. The last one, function and role of the teacher. According to principle of constructivism, the teacher's role is as a mediator and facilitator who helps students so that the student learning process runs well. The emphasis is on the student who learn and not on the teacher who teach. The description of the teacher as a mediator and facilitator is as follows: providing activity that allows students to take responsibility for design process and research, providing activity that stimulates students and helps students express their scientific idea, provide tools that support productive thinking, provide experience that support the learning process, monitor, evaluate, and show whether student minds are running or not. Okay, that's all my explanation about chapter 2 about philosophy of mathematics education. Thank you for attention. Please apologize me if I did something mistake or something wrong. See you in the next chapter. Goodbye. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.